I left before they cut the cake, and what happened after that gave me back something I didn't know I'd been missing. My mother spent 31 years cutting other people's hair in a small shop on Dundas Street West in Toronto. She still wears the same type of sensible shoes she bought when she opened the place. She still drives a 2009 Civic. When my father passed away 12 years ago, she kept the shop going on her own, raised me and my younger sister on a schedule that never once wavered, packed our lunches every morning until we were old enough to be embarrassed by it, and kept packing them anyway because she said embarrassment was a luxury she couldn't afford to accommodate. I never thought any of that needed explaining to anyone. It certainly never occurred to me that I'd be standing in a banquet hall in Oakville one day, watching the woman I planned to marry look at my mother, and then look away like she hadn't seen anything worth keeping. Her name was Isabel. We met through mutual friends at a Canada Day barbecue in 2019, standing in the same lineup for potato salad, and somehow ending up talking for 3 hours about nothing and everything. She laughed easily. She asked good questions. By August, we were spending every weekend together, and by the following spring, I had stopped thinking of my apartment as mine alone. Her parents, her father, Richard, and her mother, Vivienne, lived in a house in South Oakville that looked like something out of an architectural magazine. 4,000 square feet, double garage, a garden in the back that Vivienne described as her project, in the way that people with money describe things they don't actually need to do themselves. Richard had spent his career in commercial real estate, not developing it, advising on it. That particular distinction seemed to matter a great deal to him. The first time I went to dinner there, I wore a blazer over a clean Oxford shirt. I brought a decent bottle of Niagara Pinot Noir. Vivienne accepted it with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes and set it on the counter in a way that suggested it wouldn't be open that evening. It wasn't. Over dinner, Richard asked what I did. I told him I was a site supervisor for a mid-size residential construction company in Etobicoke. I'd been there 11 years. I worked my way up from laborer when I was 19, got my Red Seal certification, became a foreman, and eventually took on the supervisor role when the previous guy retired. I told him all of this in roughly 45 seconds, because the question had felt genuine, and I answered it that way. He nodded slowly in the manner of someone doing math in their head. Residential, he said. So, houses, mostly, some multi-unit low-rises, right. He reached for his wine glass. Good honest work. I've thought about those 3 words a lot since then. Good honest work. The way he said it, carefully, with a slight pause before honest, communicated something entirely different from the words themselves. It was the kind of compliment that's actually a ceiling. Isabel didn't seem to notice. Or if she did, she didn't say anything in the car on the way home. I told myself I was reading into it. My mother met Vivienne for the first time at a dinner we hosted at my apartment about 4 months before the wedding. I made roast chicken with roasted potatoes and green beans. My mother brought a butter tart from the Portuguese bakery down from her shop that she'd been going to for 20 years. She brought it in a white cardboard box with a piece of tape holding the flap down. Vivienne looked at the box and said, "How charming." My mother said, "They're the best ones in the city. I've been going there since before my son was born." Vivienne smiled and said nothing further about the tarts. She did, later that evening, while my mother was in the bathroom, mention to Isabel, in a voice just low enough to seem private but not quite low enough to actually be, that she hoped the wedding caterer was confirmed for something with a little more ambition. I heard it. I let it go. I filed it away in the part of my brain I was using at the time to collect things I was choosing not to examine too closely. My mother heard it too. She came back from the bathroom and sat down and finished her tea, and laughed at appropriate moments for the rest of the evening. She is one of the most composed people I have ever met in my life. The wedding was scheduled for the 3rd Saturday in September. We'd booked a venue in Burlington, a converted farmhouse event space with exposed beams and a courtyard out back. Isabel had put enormous energy into the planning. Her mother had put enormous energy into the planning of Isabel's planning. There were spreadsheets, there were tastings, there were lengthy discussions about centerpiece height as it related to sight lines across tables. I was involved where I was invited to be involved. About 2 weeks before the ceremony, Vivienne sent me an email with the seating chart attached. I opened it on my phone while I was eating lunch in my truck. I scrolled to find my mother's name. She was at table 14. The venue had 12 main reception tables arranged around the dance floor. Table 14 was a round table set apart from the others, near the bar at the back of the room, next to the door to the kitchen. There were 6 seats at it. I recognized 2 other names, a great aunt of Isabel's who was 92 and had mobility issues, and a colleague of Richard's from 20 years ago who apparently hadn't been in contact since. I called Isabel. I saw the seating plan, I said. What do you think? My mother is at table 14. There was a brief pause. She'll have a lovely view from there, of the kitchen door, of the courtyard. Isabel, my mother worked really hard on this. The table assignments went through 3 rounds. There were a lot of people to consider. She's my mother. She should be at the family table. The family table is for immediate family. My parents, my grandparents, my aunt, and her husband. There wasn't room. I asked her if we could at least move my mother to table 2 or 3, which were close to the front, close to the head table. She said those were already finalized. She said it was close to the event to be making changes. She said my mother would understand. I didn't call Vivienne. I should have. Instead, I told myself it was one evening, that my mother wouldn't care that much, that making a bigger deal of it would cause more problems than it solved. My mother, when I told her where she was sitting, said, "Oh, that's fine, sweetheart." She said it in exactly the same tone she'd used 30 years ago when I'd forgotten to tell her about the school play until the morning of. Just got on with it. The Saturday in question was warm for September, the kind of afternoon that tricks you into thinking summer isn't finished yet. The ceremony went smoothly. My mother sat in the 3rd row on my side, and I watched her face during the vows, and she was smiling with her hands folded in her lap. The reception was where things changed. The cocktail hour was in the courtyard. I spent most of it with Isabel, moving from group to group, doing the thing you do at your own wedding where you feel slightly like a host and slightly like a prop. I kept checking on my mother. She was talking to one of my cousins and seemed fine. When we moved inside for dinner, I watched my mother make her way to table 14. I watched her find her seat. I watched her unfold her napkin and read the menu card and settle in with the kind of self-contained patience that is not sadness, but is very close to it when someone else is watching it from across a room. I was at the head table with Isabel and her parents and the wedding party. The speeches went well. My best friend told a story about me that was embarrassing in the right way. Vivienne gave a toast that used the word curated 3 times in reference to Isabel's upbringing. Then, during the dinner service, it happened. I didn't see the lead up. What I saw was Richard leaning over to the man next to him, a business associate, someone in wealth management, the kind of man whose watch communicates before he does, and the 2 of them looking toward the back of the room, looking toward table 14. And Richard said something to the man, something I couldn't hear from where I was sitting, and the man laughed. I watched my mother's face from across the room. She was looking down at her plate. She may have heard it. I don't know. I still don't know. But a few minutes later, when Vivienne came to sit beside me during a gap in the program to ask how I was enjoying the evening, she said something, leaning close, voice low, still smiling, that I have gone over in my mind many times since. She said, "You know, we were all a little surprised when Isabel told us about you. Your background, we worried about fit." A small pause. "But you've done very well for yourself. And your mother, she's clearly a hard-working woman. Salt of the earth, salt of the earth." I looked at her. She was still smiling. She picked up her glass and turned back toward the room like she had offered me a gift. I sat there for approximately 45 seconds. Maybe a minute. I am not sure exactly. Isabel was on my other side, talking to her maid of honor. I touched her arm. "Did you hear what your mother just said to me?" She turned. "What? No, sorry, what?" I told her. Quietly, just the 2 of us, word for word. She looked at me for a moment, and then she looked away toward the room. She said, "She doesn't mean it badly. That's just how she talks. She's from a different generation. She's 63, you know what I mean." I sat with that for another minute, and then I looked across the room at my mother, at table 14, and I thought about the butter tarts in the white cardboard box. I thought about good, honest work and salt of the earth and Isabel's face just now. Not upset, not even a little bit, just mildly inconvenienced that I'd brought it up. And I thought, she's known. She's known this whole time. This isn't new information to her. I stood up. I walked to the microphone at the front of the room. The DJ noticed and cut the background music. 220 people looked at me. I was aware of Isabel behind me, saying my name in a way that was also a question. I tapped the mic once. Then I spoke. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I mean that genuinely. Many of you have traveled a long way and that means a lot. I need to make an announcement, and I want to make it here, clearly, in front of everyone because I think clarity matters. I paused. I'm not going to be able to proceed with this marriage. The room was very quiet. My mother is sitting at table 14 near the kitchen, away from the family she belongs with, because the people planning this event didn't think her place was among them. Tonight, at this table, she was referred to as salt of the earth. I've been watching things like this happen for over a year. Small things, but they add up, and I understand now what they mean. I looked at the head table. Vivian's expression had not changed. Richard had put down his fork. I love Isabel. That is not in question. But love is not the only thing a marriage requires. It requires someone who will stand beside you when the people you care about are being looked down on. And when I told Isabel what her mother said to me 10 minutes ago, she told me her mother didn't mean it badly. I paused. That's not the answer I needed. Isabel's chair scraped back. She said my name again. I didn't turn around. Mom, I said, and I looked across the room at table 14. Could you come up here, please? She walked across that room the way she walks everywhere. Steady, no rush, chin level. She stood beside me, and I put my arm around her shoulder. This woman opened a small business in this city 31 years ago, and built a life for our family through her own work. She has never once asked for recognition for that. I'm asking for it now, in front of everyone. A few people clapped, then more people clapped. My mother said, quietly, beside me, "Okay, sweetheart. Okay." We left together. The event coordinator met me at the coat check with an expression of controlled alarm, and I signed what needed to be signed, and we walked out into the September evening, and she drove me to her place in the 2009 Civic, and she made tea, and neither of us talked very much, which was exactly right. The calls and messages came over the next several days. From Isabel, first confused, then hurt, then angry. From her mother, a single very long email that used the word overreaction 7 times. From friends on both sides in varying degrees of support and dismay. My cousin texted me the morning after, "Bro, I was there. You did the right thing," that one I held on to. About 3 weeks after, I drove out to my mother's shop on a Tuesday afternoon. She was in between clients. We sat in the chairs by the window, with the October light coming in, and she made me a coffee from the little machine on the counter she's had since I was a teenager. She said, "I want to tell you something." I said, "Okay." She said, "You know your grandfather left me some money when he passed. Not a lot. But I invested it a long time ago, when the markets were low, and I didn't touch it. I've been adding to it for 25 years. I said, I know you've been careful," she said. Careful is one word. She took a sip of her coffee. The short version is, I'm fine, more than fine. And the shop is paid off, and the house in Scarborough is paid off, and I have money in accounts I don't fully need. I looked at her. She said, "I didn't tell you because I didn't think it mattered. I didn't want it to matter. Not to how you grew up, not to who you became. I wanted you to learn the value of things the straightforward way. Your father and I talked about that. It was a decision we made." I didn't say anything for a while. Outside on Dundas, a streetcar went by. "How much?" I asked. She looked at me with a kind of quiet amusement. "More than enough," she said. "That's all that matters." She set down her cup, and she patted my hand once, the way she has done since I was small. "You didn't leave because of money," she said. "You left because you knew the difference between how people ought to treat each other and what was actually happening in that room. That's the only thing I ever wanted to teach you." I sat there in that chair for a long time after that. The light moved across the linoleum floor. A client came in, and my mother greeted her by name and asked about her granddaughter, and they laughed about something I couldn't hear. I thought about Vivian's face at the moment I walked up to the microphone. The way her expression had stayed so perfectly controlled. I wondered now if she'd had any idea what she had actually underestimated. I thought about salt of the earth. I thought about the butter tarts in the white cardboard box. And I thought that of all the things my mother ever gave me, the lunches, the discipline, the complete and unremarkable steadiness of her, the best one might have been this, that she never needed anyone in that room to know her worth, because she already did, and she made sure, quietly, over 31 years, that I would know mine too.